Hi, I'm Edwin Yeves.
And I'm Jack Cybron
Welcome back
to the 950 Club.
Woohoo!
Okay.
Welcome back to the 950 Club. Today we're going to be talking about the Duke of Death and his Maid.
The Duke of Death and his Maid. Oh my God.
So, Jack, this is your recommendation. I had seen this show. I wasn't sure if I wanted to watch it because of the animation style. I'm not really a fan of this animation style, but oh my God, this show. And I felt like there was a gimmick because in this show, the main character, the Duke, he essentially is cursed. If he touches another living thing, it will die.
Yep.
And
Just like the Grim Reaper.
Yeah. He essentially is the Grim Reaper. He's to the townspeople, he's kind of like this mythological figure. You know, he's like this urban legend to them. And so what was it about this show that you liked, Jack, and what made you recommend it to me?
Yes. And I do admit, I'm also in Edwin's camp in regards to CGI anime. It's still a new field. Last 10 or so years have been strides with CGI anime, usually in shorts, usually in like weird indie productions, online productions like RWBY, Nice to Sinonia, an infamous one through Netflix. Beastars, a relatively popular one. I forgot that was CGI. However, Duke of Death is kind of that threshold of CGI, but only in certain elements.
I think Duke of Death handles it a lot better than all of those other shows.
A million times over, even over Berserk. And I love the Berserk new seasons, and people have not even bothered because of CGI animation. And I can understand why, because they both have the same idea of CGI. However, Duke of Death kind of cheats with that. It's not full on CGI.
You can tell that it isn't. The characters mainly are.
Yeah.
They still have that kind of like stick figure look to them, but because of everything else that the show does, it's not as noticeable or pronounced.
Yeah, even with the regular manga in my hand, you'd be amazed with the manga because it's definitely designed like a Edward Gorey type of like storybook. Are You Afraid of the Dark? Edgar Allan Poe, Tim Burton.
Yeah.
Mixed in with like the environment of Howard's End and Remains of the Day.
Yeah. That's a perfect description of like what this show is.
Yeah. And a contemporary for modern day anime, I would argue, is Sleeping Princess and the Demon Castle.
Well, I remember if we talked about just how pretty that show was.
Yeah. Underrated pretty.
Yeah, like you get like this stained glass window kind of vibe.
Yeah.
From this show. Because the shots when they're dancing, or like one of my favorite episodes is when they use the mirror to cross over to Halloween Land.
Yeah.
And oh my God, that was absolutely gorgeous.
And that was me with the second time viewing, because the first time viewing, I just like so enamored that I immediately was focusing on every line of dialogue. Sometimes you're like that, especially when you first engage it. The second time viewing, you definitely notice a little bit more with key details.
Yeah.
And like Edwin pointed out too, when they go to Spooky Land, the witches universe, as it were, it's a totally different experience. And that side of it was technically 2D.
Yeah.
Almost like a Roger Rabbit scenario.
Yeah, it was like they had stepped into Halloween Town.
Yeah. From Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah, when you referenced Tim Burton earlier, and it totally had that vibe of like something magical and spooky, and that's where this show ends up going.
Yeah.
Like you said, Howard's End but at the same time, it has like this magical realism to it that permeates the show.
Yeah.
And the show sets this up too because they spend a lot of time looking at the moon. Like they have like these darkened
The
rooms.
traditional gothic romance.
Yeah.
Type of feel.
Yeah, you have the owl that you find out later on what the owl is.
And the cat too.
Yeah, they start showing up
Yeah.
at the beginning, but it's this very spooky gothic romance.
Right as you watch this show, it literally has that encompassing feel. That's why initially when Edwin asked me, why do I like this show? This is a strong reason why. Let me set it up for you, because the beginning shots show a full moon with bats flying, focusing on this mansion at night. Classical piano hits. Then you see a shadowy silhouette of a boy wearing a top hat with the moon behind him, a full focus on the moon. And this is where the trickery comes, because the 2D stuff is more of the effects compared to the 3D stuff once you see the characters up close. But anyway, the boy stares at the piano. He's about to play a note, but then he kind of hesitates and he mentions, "Death incarnate, huh?" The following scene shows the daytime at the mansion, similar to Howard's End, a traditional romantic type of English prose in the 19th century, early 20th century. And it just shots of that. Lightning beaming up all over this mansion. And then you see this boy writing this letter, just like all the classical authors you can think of, what they did back in the day. And as he's writing this letter to his parents, checking up on his curse, because like Edwin mentioned, he is cursed by this witch. And as he finishes his letter, he touches a flower, and the flower wilts. And this is like a perfect setup for any type of romantic story you can think of. However, a contrast happens. As he contemplates, he mentions, "Something else has been bothering me." Then comes in a woman dressed in all black gown, and she looks like she's in mourning. However, she leans forward, flaunting a pale bosom, and mentions, in the most seductive way, "Your tea is ready." And that is the DukeofDeath, because after that moment of traditional Gothic romance, you get this contrast. And Alice is that contrast.
Yeah, there's this show is funny. It's funny. The interplay between him and Alice is absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
The teasing that she does is merciless.
Yes.
And it makes him crazy.
Oh, yeah.
And it's funny to watch and I like how their romance is kind of like set up within like the first 3 episodes.
Yeah, especially that first minute though.
Oh yeah. I mean, the intensity, like at certain point, she's like, "Well, wait, what did you need?" And she starts lifting her skirt. He's like, "Stop doing that."
And we're talking about the lewdest of the lewdest flaunting.
Oh, she's totally like
Yep.
There is no shame in her game. It is merciless teasing of this man.
Mind you, this man is a cursed being that can touch her within a grasp, but she gets so close to him that it's insane how he reacts towards her flirtations. And I have a theory on that.
Well, my theory is that she's determined to help him feel alive.
That's what I'm going for too, but also to keep it at a distance, because she knows at the end of the day, he's like the perfect gentleman.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, yeah. I mean, absolutely. Even without his curse, he would be, the perfect gentleman. She understands that. She feels safe with him. She knows that he would never do anything to hurt Alice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you find that out along the way within the first interactions with each other, because, mind you, she is a maid, and he's living in this villa all by himself. Mm-hmm. He's a rich boy.
Yeah.
And you find out along the way that these interactions are very key, at least in the beginning, because even though it can go to that threshold, if you're not comfortable with that, there's a method behind the madness, though.
There's like these wonderful scenes between the two of them that constantly kind of amaze me.
Yeah, besides the flirtations, because that's played for humor through and through.
Oh yeah, the flirtations are hilarious. But one of my favorite scenes is when, there's when they go to the spooky town. That's my absolute favorite episode. Yeah. It's so visually stunning. But there's a scene that's reminiscent of The Little Mermaid when they're out in a lake together.
Yeah.
And she falls into the water, and she says, "Will you kiss me?" And he says, "But I can't. She's like, how romantic would it be to die right here from one of your kisses underneath the moon?
Oh yeah.
And he's so
He dies.
yeah, he's like, oh my God. And he gets closer and closer, and he knows and she knows that he won't. But afterwards, you could see that there's a moment of disappointment in her eyes, and I thought, okay, that's very telling of the entirety of this.
He drops her guard too at times too.
Yeah. Yeah, she's fully susceptible to his charms.
Yes, yes.
She's not entirely immune as she pretends to be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is pretty much like the gentleman age of, think of like traditional English dramas where he's like, I can't even look at her for her beauty gazes my eyes. You know, that type of lofty dialogue. But at times he gets in a nervous wreck. And another interesting aspect of the show is that I consider it one of the best modern day animes out there. I honestly believe that because you wouldn't think like a show like this that's so thrown back to that golden age of cinema, to romantic literature, it still has a relatability because of Bo-chan's mannerisms and also his calling in life and his pursuit of passion. And he doesn't translate it well whatsoever.
No, you recommended this one to me. I don't remember if I had watched any of it before.
It was a catch-up surprise.
Yeah, it was a catch-up surprise.
Yep.
That I had watched. It was this was kind of amazing. I was taken aback. I really wasn't sure at first. The teasing, I was kind of like, oh no.
Yeah, I thought that was going down that rabbit hole too.
Yeah, I thought, oh, this is just gonna be nothing but lewdness, and oh my God, what am I watching? I mean, and the what I liked is like, well, you never know with a show until you're in it.
Yeah,
because there are moments where they can drop things on you, and you're like, oh, this is that kind of show.
Yeah, in a very quiet environment. We were talking about an empty mansion with only two main characters and maybe some supporting characters just about to enter.
Well, yeah, this show is about them.
Yeah.
This show is about them. And like most anime will start out like that.
Yeah.
And they'll introduce characters as they go. But yeah, you know right off the bat, these two are the main focus.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the most well done. Like the moodiness. Like I've seen other shows where they try to do this, and honestly, I think that the CGI might actually using the CGI for the main characters and using the 2D for the backdrops. I think it kind of helps.
Yeah, and unfortunately, with anime communities, not ranked too high, mainly because of that feel towards it, and they want to get the more traditional art in there, and they think this is supposed to be traditional. I think the CGI does wonders with this. Like I said before, like there's a contrast that needs to be addressed, and the show plays around with that. It's seamless in my book.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with that. I think that this is not a hard sell because of, how enchanting the characters and the storyline
Precisely. You're correct, yeah.
So I don't think it's a hard sell. But I do appreciate that it's not your standard anime artwork.
That's what I mean.
Because I think that would have dulled the.
It would have pretended to be something else that it wasn't.
No. I think I think you could pull this off with like traditional
2D.
Yeah, with traditional 2D. But I think the character designs really, really help with selling this and setting it apart from those shows. I think that stylistically, it's far more interesting. So I think the story and the dialogue, if this had been more traditional artwork, I don't know that I would have liked it as much. And that's why when I was saying that this, for me, is one of the best uses of that 3D artwork.
Exactly, yeah.
And I think that's why. Because what you have is a really quiet story.
And eerily quiet. Like we're talking likes of like Super Cub and Laid Back Camp, even like these very quiet, subtle moments.
Yeah, it's quiet and it's moody and it's it's very enchanting. And I think that if they had gone the traditional route, I don't think it would have worked as well.
Yeah.
And
I can't think of like a example, but the closest like one where it could have been more in that line, I guess, would have been Toilet Bound Hanukkah, at least in that feel.
Well, I've called that one. That one's absolutely gorgeous too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then that
No
one I
shame in
referred
that.
to.
Yeah.
I referred to that as stained glass as well.
Yeah, but it's different for a different audience. Let's put it that way.
Oh, absolutely. No, I mean, well, they have similar. Like they're both about supernatural, like goings on.
Yeah.
But there's still. I do appreciate that there's still the danger. There's similarities in the characters.
Yeah.
In that there's still the danger.
You'd be surprised with the danger in Duke of Death.
But Alice is far more together than Nene.
Fair.
Yes. Yes. Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. You could say that Nene's a distant cousin to a character later on with the show named Cuff.
Yeah. Cuff. Oh, Cuff.
But once we get there, like we said, the initial episodes at least are these two characters. The most important supporting character comes in, and his name is Rob. Rob is the lead butler of the mansion.
Rob looks like he came out of a Metal Gear Solid game.
Yeah.
I was like, what?
Snake when he is old. Yeah.
Pretty much. Yeah. And
but he has the most sensitive voice compared to Snake.
Rob is interesting in that sometimes he's played for laughs, and then sometimes he's like the wisest one on the show.
Yeah, and he's definitely getting up there. Unfortunately, he's becoming more blind. Mind you, he has an eye patch on his eye, and he was not in the first episode because he had a bad back.
He had injured his back. Yeah. Which is interesting because he seems like Superman.
Yeah.
Through most of the show, so you're like, wait, yeah.
Especially with a flashback, you like wish he was your Alfred in a way.
Yeah. Well, the Duke's sister sure does.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And speaking of recurring characters, oh, no.
Viola.
Yeah, because after the interaction with Rob is cute little play for laughs because you get the setup. You get more of these characters just popping in.
Yeah.
And even though it's not these main two, you get to attach more with the supporting characters along the way.
Well, that's what a good anime does. It introduces these characters that
one by one.
Yeah. So you have your two main characters, and the show really does a good job of giving them their time and establishing what it is between them that works for the show.
Yeah.
And then they introduce essentially what I would call foils.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Viola is technically the first foil.
Yes. She is insane.
Yeah. Viola happens to be the younger sister of Bochan. And Rob is of the house. You can tell like these three are a family, a makeshift family, if you will.
Yeah.
However, Viola comes from the real family of Bochan and checks up on him in the most sisterly way possible.
She goes to torment him, man. She goes to torment that man and to peep on Rob.
Oh yeah, and she's the fastest talking one of the bunch.
Yeah, she's I was put off by her outfit at first.
Oh yeah, even the show does make a comment on it.
Yeah, because it's like this modern kind of like lolly.
Very lolly.
Yeah, and I was like, okay.
Kind of like what's that word? Women wear sometimes. What their onesies are, adult onesies.
Oh,
like the dress. It was a fashion.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah,
it was a fashion staple for a while.
A jumper.
Jumper.
Yeah, she wears a red jumper with the shorts that are almost Daisy Dukes.
It reminds me a little bit of Roger Rabbit, at least that outfit.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit more full cut.
And more feminine.
Yeah, but I was like, oh, okay, this is here.
Yeah. But it's play for laughs, and unfortunately, it goes to that contrast like I've been meandering about, because with Alice's contrast, Viola's contrast is with Rob. Because if you think of Rob, you think of traditional elegance, sheer beauty, whereas Viola is modern day, silly playing games, and let me just crush on you so hard.
Well, she's a child, and so it's like that comes across quite a bit.
Yeah.
And he comments on it, and that relationship is mostly played for laughs.
Yeah.
Until later on, when it's like you essentially realize that both of them, Viola and his brother Walter, they really just want their family back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of conflict, but at the end of the day, they kind of just want their brother back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Walter's played a little bit later on. He
Yeah.
means well with the family too, and he has a he has a number 2 complex.
He really does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because the part of the setup of the show, at least with Bochan, he is going to be first in the heir of the inheritance.
Well, he's the firstborn.
Yeah, firstborn,
Mm-hmm.
and Walter's the secondborn. Because in the background, because they don't really address it too much, but they playfully do it right at the end where they address the father.
Yeah.
The father, unfortunately, is very sick. So Bochan, even though he's cursed and shunned from his family, technically his mother, he's still going to have rights to the heir of the inheritance.
Yeah.
But the key factor, the overall dilemma of the whole show, is that he has to break the curse.
Yeah.
Not only for inheritance, because that's a cherry on top, but Bochan's sole purpose to break the curse is to touch Alice.
So, being that he's a duke and the firstborn, yeah, he's gonna be. He will inherit this. I think that gives that gives Viola and Walter kind of like. Well, Walter has his second complex.
Yeah, it's cute.
But at the same time, I think it gives them this sense of instability that they kind of want the Duke to kind of like figure out. And so they're kind of at a loss.
Yeah.
The family, even his mom, I mean, I think they're all at a loss as to what to do. And it becomes Bochan's, the Duke's, it becomes his responsibility to try to figure that out. So the show essentially becomes, how are we going to break the curse?
Yeah. And the mother does it in her own way, though, because she is harsh. How they set up the mom is quite awesome, because I love when they do character development like this. You never see her face until the finale. And during the interplay with the show, because it could be wacky, it could be fun and silly and lighthearted. However, the same scenes are always with her mother sitting at the end of the table with the other side of the big table without the heir to the family, without the father, essentially. And the kids are right next to her.
Yeah.
No Bochan, though, because he's off in his villa. But the mother the whole time tries to correct her children, tries to correct Viola with her dresses, tries to correct... Well, she doesn't scold Walter that much, because Walter is actually a good son. However, she has control.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, she's in charge.
Yep.
You get that sense that she's harsh.
Yeah.
But not entirely because she wants to be.
Yeah.
But that she needs to be because she has to hold this thing together.
Yep.
Yeah, and that really causes a conflict with her and the Duke.
Yeah. And the second time viewing, it gave me appreciation, at least with the time that this show is supposed to be taking place. Granted, there's a little bit of time hopping here and there, at least with tone. But overall, how she handles the things with the family, that's very accurate.
Yeah. Well, it's a hard show to place, historically.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's like, all right, they have horse-drawn carriages, but then sometimes things seem a little bit more modern.
Yes, and they speak Japanese. That's always going to be like, let's play around with history a little bit kind of thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a it's a Japanese show.
Granted.
But they did, the names are like, the names are all like European.
Yeah, and based on setting, mostly English, with Alice, with Walter.
Rob
as well.
Yeah, Viola.
Yep.
Yeah, this is definitely, like you said, a gothic romance, and the names reflect that.
But even though this is an encompassing plot, it's still a simple story at the end of the day because of Bochan and Alice. And as much as they can interact and flirt, there still needs a little spice in this anime.
And there is.
Oh, yeah.
So let's introduce the magic at this point.
Oh,
now,
yes.
There's a hint to it with, like you said, the cat and the owl. And even when they visit the town on their date.
Yeah, it's during like a festival.
Yeah, during the festival.
Over a folklore tale of a princess trying to move to the moon.
But Alice has a fateful encounter.
Ooh.
Yes. And that's when we're introduced to the witches.
Yeah, specifically this masked witch, similar to the Day of the Dead type of masks. And that witch's name is Daleth. You don't know her name or backstory just yet, but it's a cute little play because during this festival, Alice sees this white-gowned nun dressed up like a masked party goer in this town event. So, kind of abruptly interacts with Alice and basically says, "Hey, I know your secret," in that tone at least. And Alice instantly was like, do you know anything about my mom? So it sets up a little bit of a drama spell because we don't know too sure of Alice's mother.
Well, the witch essentially thinks that Alice is her mother,
Yeah.
and so she's like, "Wait, who are you?"
Yeah.
And she says, "You knew my mother." And so the witch is like, "Yeah." And so that was very like that's one of the things that sets this. Their outfits are so between the mask and their outfits, it's like very like, whoa, this is something like you can't miss the fact that this is something strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And mind you, she didn't really necessarily ask about Bochan's curse, the
No.
whole overall thing. Naturally, because she's a loss of her mother, too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a show that makes you appreciate your mothers more, too.
Definitely. But then we're introduced to a character named Cuff.
Oh, yeah. And this is a good episode because it shows this dramatic element of, or it starts to show the surface of how deeply Bochan cares for Alice because they were playing games in the snow. But unfortunately, Alice lost her earring that she got from her mom. Also shows the importance that Alice has with her mother. And being a gentleman that he is, Dan B with this blizzard, I'm going to find that earring. He spends the whole night searching the shape of a crossed earring throughout this big pile of snow. During the whole time, Bochan's getting weak and tired. Mind you, this is the middle of the night, too. It's kind of weird how they do it with Alice and Rob being distracted, but it's cute. At the end of the day, he's just trying to find what he can during this blizzard. However, he's exhausted and falls apart in the snow. Then comes this bat coming in.
Yeah.
Blaze of glowing, flapping around. And sure enough, this bat turns into a witch.
Yeah, a human or a witch named Cuff.
Yeah, and she's in an all white gown. You don't see her face just yet, but she notices that Bochan's in a struggle, and Bochan tells her, "Oh, I lost this earring for my maid," and she was taken aback. She's like, "That's the sweetest thing I ever heard."
Yeah.
And she immediately encompasses the snow with flames.
Well, you're forgetting the fact that she wanted to steal their food.
Well, initially.
She was like, and he comments on the fact, well, that's pretty blunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But honest, then that shows immediately one of the best characters in the show. That Cuff is her own being.
Well, Cuff has no pretenses.
None.
She's almost childlike and naive.
Yeah.
Which is unusual given that
But she hides it really deep in the surface. It's remarkable how she hides those flaws of hers, I would argue.
Well, she's charming and she's pretty and she's charming and she's young and she manages to get away with that.
Exactly.
But at the same time, you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. In a meta level, it's very impressive, even for anime, I would say.
No, the characters in this show, they really worked at making each character an individual.
Yeah.
Like not only in their design, but in their personality.
Yeah.
And in not only in their personality, their thoughts, their actions, everybody's very distinctive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sure enough, you get to the sense of that Cuff helping out in her own way kind of thing. But right after Cuff, we are also introduced to another character. Now, this character comes a little bit later, and he shows up in the most similar way to Cuff, while Bochan and Alice are in a frozen lake trying to learn how to ice skate. And Cuff happens to be there, and she's having a good time. But then comes this white crow that latches on the branch. But basically, he makes his introduction similar to Cuff and turns into a witch, however, with a crow's head.
Yes, which was very off-putting at first.
It shows once again with the show. What my favorite thing of the show is the contrast of styles.
It decided like I'm like, okay, we're going here.
Yeah.
And it was like, what?
Don't forget these are witches because Alice is beautiful and she turns to full on human. However, we forgot to mention that Cuff is also technically half human, half witch.
Yeah.
And I forgot the term of that. It has a technical term, but we can't find it at the moment. But nonetheless, the character we're talking about that turned into Crow, or
Zane.
Zane.
Yeah.
Zane he's
interesting.
He's similar to the likes of Roxy from Mushoku Tensei, his own beats, his own story. And you get to understand that this character is gonna make the show even better.
Well, he's very cool,
Yeah.
but he's like that cool, mysterious, dangerous guy.
Yeah.
You're not sure where his. You know that pretty much the only thing that Zane cares about in this world is Cuff.
Yeah.
You know, it's like he doesn't. He's a witch, but how much does his loyalty lie with the witches?
Yeah, and he's almost like the devil wearing a suit kind of thing.
Yeah.
You get that vibe initially because he immediately flirts with Alice.
Meet Joe Black, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then Bo-chan, of course, he's not too defensive, but he's like, this guy, what's up with this
It's
guy?
like, back off, dude. She's mine.
Even though he can't touch her. And then,
Yeah.
and Zane was taken aback with that too.
Yeah.
Because he's like, okay, well, I'm just here to have a good time.
Well, Zane is kind of a romantic.
In Bo-chan's language, as it were.
Yeah, Zane's kind of a romantic, but he's definitely more observant and perceptive.
Smarter too, yeah.
Yeah, than Cuff.
And older too, technically. Yeah.
But you get that sense that here's another foil.
Yeah. Well, the foil in the sense of like as mentioned with Roxy from Mushoku Tensei,
Yeah.
kind of like their own character that dictates the pace of the show. And
Well, kind of like
yeah.
it's somebody for the Duke to worry about.
Yeah.
It's like, wait, is he going to go after Alice or is he not going to go after Alice?
Yeah.
It's like, how do I keep them away?
Because I'm just gonna say he kind of has a swinger personality.
I get that. That does come across. I didn't think about that before.
Yeah, but
yeah.
Similar to Cuff, is really buried on the surface. And I might add, even though he cares about Cuff, he teases her like beyond belief. That's usually a sign of affection. Let's put it that way.
Well, yeah, their relationship is very endearing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it just it's evolved kind of endearment though.
yeah. I don't think he can. He teases her it's similar into the way that Alice teases the Duke.
Yes, and I was trying to go for that too. Yes.
Yeah. But with Cuff and Zane, it's a little bit more like a brother sister kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They know each other. They really know each other.
Yeah.
And dare I say that Zane is technically immature in his own right too, because he can't express his true feelings to Cuff. And Cuff knows this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Cuff can be honest and say the truth, but Zane has a way to make his truth even more stronger.
Well, he's an overthinker.
That too. Yeah.
Yeah. Because he's older, I think he realizes the consequences a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think he's afraid.
Yeah. But he plays it Joe cool.
He
plays
does.
It smooth. Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
He has that going for him. And they're the ones that try to help the Duke to lift the curse.
Yeah. And you'd be surprised where that progresses because when Bo-chan meets with Cuff, he immediately asks her, do you know any witch that could break my curse? And Cuff, of course, being young, I don't know. Same thing with Zane. Zane kind of was like, you know what? Let's do this strategy. Let's go to a witch's meeting. Or no, a witch's Sabbath.
Yeah. And that was, whoa.
Well, okay, we're going there. And this show takes you there.
Yeah.
But like we alluded to earlier, this is where they go to the dreamland, to the Halloween town, if you will.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was phenomenal. I mean, like that episode kind of like sealed the deal for me.
Yeah.
On this show.
It's the mid-season finale in my book.
I couldn't like pull my eyes away from the television because like it feels like something from like a 1940s Disney Halloween special.
Yes.
Yeah.
And earlier when you mentioned what I liked most about the show is that feeling, that sense of like even the medium itself becoming more nostalgic than you in a weird way because they heighten the memories that you have.
I get that.
Yeah.
I get that. There's definitely a sense of it's very retro.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very retro cinema.
Yeah. And specifically, I have a whole thing on that because every decade has a time where it views a different decade. Like right now, a lot of people are nostalgic for the 90s. That's 30 years ago. And like with our age group, we're basically like, we're very nostalgic. And these younger kids are just learning about it. In cinema in the 1970s, that was a case study because we're talking about movies like The Sting, Days of Heaven, Bonnie and Clyde, Gates of Heaven, Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid. Now, in Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid, there's a specific thing that they do that makes you feel like you're there in that moment. And that's when they play the song Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head. Paul Newman is riding his bike with Catherine Ross. They're just playing around with the song. In this show, Duke of Death, it pretty much translates that to modern day audiences. And it's very specific. And I feel like I'm watching Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head throughout the whole show.
That's interesting.
Yeah. It's almost like the creators of that time, during that whole era, in the 70s especially, they look at their grandparents' notebooks. They tried on their clothes. They wanted to live in the history, but in their own way. And this whole show is pretty much that encompassing feel, at least when I watch it.
Well, modern day, I think the internet has given people the ability to essentially dress and listen and be whatever decade they want.
The aesthetic. And like I mentioned with the 90s, that's like a total thing now.
There's two movies that really were kind of a mind, kind of like really, really messed with my mind in that sense.
Yeah.
And I think that it goes back to what you're saying about this show. And one of them was Star Wars Rogue One.
Yes.
And the other one was Blade Runner 20...
the recent one, 2045.
Yeah, 2045. There's a scene in Blade Runner 2045 where the main character essentially runs into Rachel from the original.
Yes, yes.
And that moment is so mesmerizing because it plays with your... If you saw the original when it was released, and you're watching this now, it plays with your memories of the original and the new one.
Yeah,
and
it's Uncanny Valley.
Cognitive dissonance.
There you go. That's more
dissonance.
More accurate. Yeah, that's more accurate.
It's not only you're essentially creating a memory of a memory.
Yeah, from a different time.
Yeah, and it's like it was such a disturbing experience. The same thing with Rogue One, where they used footage of the pilots from A New Hope.
Yeah, correct.
And so I'm like, wait.
Yeah. And part of those two, it feels like you're a kid again in a weird way playing with those toys.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, especially Rogue One.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It creates this kind of like memory out of your memories in a way that you can't help but be like, what's happening?
Yeah, exactly.
And this episode of the Duke of Death kind of does that.
Yeah, and for me, that was me as a kid watching Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yeah.
Literally verbatim. And I was like, oh my God. And of course, with a twist with the Witch's Sabbath.
Yeah. Well, for me, it took it back even further. Like, those little Disney.
It's like Sleepy Hollow.
Yeah.
I could think of very specific Disney.
Yeah.
Very specific because it was a different style compared to modern day.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And speaking of the devil, Pixar with CGI, even that's like its own sphere Disney.
Yeah.
At least with nostalgia take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, this didn't remind me of those, but it did remind me of, like you said, that specific Disney,
feel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even the 1940s, 1950s Disney feel. Yeah.
But played in the 70s too. There's a weird age gap that you're witnessing outside the box.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one of the things that I think sets this show apart.
Yeah.
Is that the creators, I think it's JC Studio.
Yes.
Or JC Staff is the studio.
JC Staff, you're right.
They're doing a lot.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I always enjoy finding in an anime or a manga, where the creators can blend these different genres, and they know what they're doing to the point where it's like they're blending all these different things and it works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're just the top tier creators that they are. They really are. And they almost they studied everything we just mentioned.
Yeah.
Verbatim. It's remarkable. In this small little episode, we're downplaying the fact that this is one of the funniest episodes too, because Zane and Cuff, they're casual, oh, Sabbath, whatever.
You're like, yeah. But it's like, this is, and you get that sense of danger.
Yeah. It's eerie. It's eerie too on top of it. Yeah,
well, because they all start looking at them, the Denzians.
Yes.
Of this, of the Denzians of the witch world are not convinced that, because essentially the Sabbath is essentially a meeting.
Yeah, and how it's played out too. Like you get this scary nun, mind you, it's Daleth organizing this witches event with other weird creatures. Don't get me wrong, but she's the most intimidating. You're like, what's going to happen? Is somebody going to be sacrificed? But right as she orders everyone in, she's like, okay, so why are we gathered up today? It's just a roll call. A flower blossomed on the Marndake. Anyone want to chip in for a voodoo doll?
Yeah. You're like, wait, what?
I cracked. And second time viewing, I laughed even more because I didn't register it the first time. I was just more in awe. But this time I'm like, that's too funny.
Yeah, no, you're like, oh no. Are they going to get fined out? Are they going to die? What's going to happen? Yeah. But then it's like, no, it's an office meeting. Hi, Bob.
Yeah. And mind you, Zane and Cuff, that's pretty much the reason why they're so casual, at least with the Wicca elements of it.
Yeah.
Like you could sense like they're obliged to do it and they have to follow orders. They have powers after all, and they're technically immortal. However, it's just like whatever. It's not that special.
They're like, we are who we are. Because I think, and that's one of the cool things about the show is that everybody is just who they are.
Exactly, 100%.
And they essentially become accustomed. And that's like one of the main arcs of the show for the Duke. It's like
I was going there too. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like becoming who he is, finding that like it's the show. These 12 episodes are his journey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that point, you expect what you expect out of the show. There's still mystery abound. And the next few episodes are pretty much like play with slower moments.
Well, it becomes, it kind of becomes like, all right, it goes from being the show about the relationship to the show about breaking the curse.
Yeah.
And you get like these little not side stories, but you get their attempts to solve the curse.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And from very mundane moments to interwoven dialogues about understanding each other with Bo-chan and Alice. Their flashbacks as well, getting a little more accustomed with their histories.
Well, the Duke's flashback was really sad.
Alice's too.
Yeah. But when they first sent him to the mansion.
Yes.
That was hard.
He was trapped in. He reminded me of a lot of Light from Death Note, like very claustrophobic and like weird looking, and he had the buggy eyes all about. This is why I really like the CGI animation because it really emphasized his struggle.
Yeah.
And we didn't really play up to this because part of the show's charm is to show that Bo-chan does have a prior history with Alice. He just didn't remember.
Yeah. Well, he was like 5.
Yeah. He repressed it technically because after he was cursed, that was it. I'm cursed.
Yeah. All he remembered really was the curse.
Yeah, precisely. When he recollects his memory of Alice, it comes in an event, though, where he was super mean to Alice when he first reintroduces to Alice in the mansion because Alice was assigned to be in the mansion to help out Rob because Rob is getting old, technically.
Yeah.
And basically, Alice is supposed to be a prodigy, but Bo-chan's not sold on it. It's like, don't even think about it. I'm going to die. Like, don't even waste your time with me.
Yeah.
Because I could kill you.
Yeah, this is my future. Yeah. I don't have one.
Yeah. So there's a playful way how he does it because Alice is stubborn. Since day one, she's been that charming, stubborn angel. And Bo-chan's like, you know what? Clean my room. I give you 3 days. Mind you, it's a total mess.
It was a disaster.
She cleans it overnight. And how she delivers it is like anything for you, Grace. Like she's becoming more and more of this charmed entity.
Yeah. The teasing with the teasing.
Oh yeah. But he gives up. He's like, you know what? I'm just gonna run out in the middle of blizzard and just die. Just die. She makes him remember his childhood.
Yeah.
And that's where it comes to. And Alice just has that mesmerizing magic with her.
That's one of the things that I think the CGI does well.
That as well. The effects for sure.
Yeah. Like some of the other shows I haven't liked because they don't do the facial.
It's very stoic, and they try to keep it to the likes of anime or to the likes of the manga, unfortunately.
Well, like I'll think of like the Knights of Sidonia.
Yeah.
The facial expressions just weren't there for that show. But in this show, the faces are almost a little distorted.
Yeah.
But
when it's super close up, that's the only time.
Well, no, I mean, his reaction, like it's distorted, but it gives them by doing that, it gives them, by the simplistic nature of their faces, it gives them the ability to like show more emotion
Yeah.
than I think it would have if they were more detailed.
Yeah, precisely.
Yeah, because like Alice's eyes are very, very expressive.
Yeah.
And that a lot of that, like when she's trying either to seduce him or convince him of something, or the emotions, with this art style, that really comes across. Same thing with like Viola. There's moments where like, or Cuff, their eyes are very, very expressive.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that that's one of the things that this show does well when it comes to the CGI.
And especially for the really important moments.
Yeah.
Like the scene you mentioned with the lake, how it interplays with the folklore that was mentioned in the show. It ties in seamlessly.
Yeah.
The one thing we've also downplayed too is there's another contrast with the show on many layers of the contrast, especially with the CGI style and the dollhouse type of atmosphere, is the musical numbers.
Yeah. Well, there's even one where like they're using a music book to try to reverse his curse.
Exactly.
And that becomes a whole like musical episode.
Yeah.
And his playing talk about gothic romance.
Yeah, that's 100% there.
Yeah, with the piano playing.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and he even says, he's like, because toward the beginning, he doesn't know what's going to happen to him. And he doesn't think that he's going to be the head of any household.
No. He doesn't even care.
Yeah, well, let alone at his household.
Yeah.
Or the one that he came from. And so he's writing music to pay the bills.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And keep him sane, too.
Yeah.
And because with the musical numbers, second time viewing, I did not remember them. And I hated that because they're tremendous numbers. That's like probably like the most hidden charm of the show, too. It overwhelms you.
Well, all of them are very different, too.
Each song is different.
There's not like, they don't repeatedly use his same piano. Like they wrote music for each one of these sequences. Yeah.
Yes.
Like there's the ones that come like with the solving of the music book.
Yeah.
But there's also, the whose spirit is trapped in the music book.
Oh, yeah.
But there's also when he's playing music in the town to kind of like cheer up the lost boy.
Yes.
Or then there's the
And
music that's
like,
playing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a ragtime type of song.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I really like that.
Yeah.
And that how different that was from like when they're dancing or when like at the beginning when he's playing.
Mm-hmm.
So you have like throughout the show, you have like not only the music, the sets the mood, but you also have these like musical performances, and the music's very different in each one.
Yeah.
And it's all piano music, and it's all and that really makes it a gothic romance.
It's nothing you expect out of the show. It's tremendous. Yeah. Similar in the same vein as Vivi, because similar to Bochan, Vivi had to find her own calling, her own soul, and music happens to be that accompaniment. And yeah, we can't praise this show enough. It's one of those shows where I want to kind of keep at bay at the finale because second season's coming up. In the finale of the first season, it's like we alluded to earlier how Bochan had tried his darndest to break this curse. He doesn't.
He doesn't, but there's a lot of revelations along the way.
Oh, yeah.
But I think the most important part is that he's able to essentially, even though he hasn't lifted the curse, he's essentially figured out what it is that he wants from life.
Yeah.
And I think he's able to convince his mother that by doing that, she can accept him. She's like, okay. Like, okay.
Yeah. Becomes to that point where the romance is obvious and the mother still hasn't like registered the concept of it. Mind you, this is different societies.
Yeah.
We're talking about a maid, a servant, lower class, poor. And you have high society, a duke with inheritance, royalty at that point. And Bochan has to make a decision. And he has his family meeting with his brother and sister and his mom on the other side of the table because they're still afraid of his curse. He confesses his love. And the mother doesn't accept it, but she respects her son.
His declaration.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a beautiful ending. Because you rarely get that sense of like conclusion, but that's life. Sometimes you have to grow instead of solving every problem imaginable. And that's part of the process.
I don't want to call it simplistic because
it's well thought out. Yeah.
Well, he understood the consequences. Yeah. He's like, this is what I'm choosing. This is what I'm choosing for my life. And he embraces that and is bold enough and brave enough to tell his mom, this is what I'm doing. And yeah, she respects it. That's his journey from going to like the self-pitying cursed child who just wants to die to the man who's able to stand there on even footing with his mom, who has been throughout the entire show, even in the intro, like kind of like, like the main foil for this whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, man, she's the one to beat.
Yeah.
Like even the witches aren't as terrifying as the mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's the battle that psychologically he has to win, because she's the one that's banished him. She's the one that's put him where he's at. And she's the one waiting for him to find it within himself, to find some kind of motivation within himself to lift that curse.
Yeah.
And the motivation is his love for Alice.
Oh yeah. And as much as we mention all the other great elements of the show, everything you can think of what you desire for an anime, to be honest, at least for me, the romance between Bochan and Alice is super unique, super endearing, because even with the lewd humor, even with all the charms in the world from both sides, they care enough with each other that it's almost like unplausible. You never really seen a romance like this. And there are similar stories in the same vein, Beauty and the Beast, of course, but this plays it tremendously, at least how it handles his tone and his demeanor and his loose attitudes too.
Well, I mean, I'm glad that you brought up Beauty and the Beast, because there's a lot of similarities.
That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah.
At least,
I think it's intentional.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that you need to think. I don't think that you need to go much further than that.
Yeah.
Because this does feel like a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Very much so. It feels like a gothic romance fairy tale, and I think the creators knew what they were doing, because it feels that way.
Yeah.
But their relationship, yeah, she's in love with essentially the Reaper, the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
Who chooses not to be. But the point that I wanted to make though is that their romance is very endearing.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah.
They've suffered a lot and they found each other, and they have this mutual love for each other. They can love each other. They just can't touch each other.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's sad.
It's sad, but it's almost like they're already hugging each other throughout the show.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, there's moments where there's a moment where he falls ill and, or he can't sleep. And so he goes to her rooms and,
it's set up similar to the one of the scenes in Kaguya-sama Love is War.
Yeah. And she just, she puts him to sleep and he's like, wait, nothing's going to happen? And she's like, what did you think was going to happen?
Almost like married life. And
it's very cute, but you could see the affection that she has for him. Yeah.
It reminds me of my parents, to be honest, because I remember my mom mentioning one time that most healthy sleeping patterns have separate bedrooms, at least for the husband and wife, because one can snore, one just prefers to be alone and be comfortable. However, my mom mentioned I need to be in the bed with my husband. That's the only way I'll sleep. Yeah. See, that's the idea I had, at least watching that
with
sequence.
those. Yeah. With them, you get the sense that they're becoming not dependent on each other, but it's definitely that relationship where they bring comfort to each other.
Yeah, and that's the ethos of the show.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Like, if I articulated the show well, it's that feeling of the romance, at least what you get out of it when watching it.
Cool. And that has been our discussion on the Duke of Death and his maid.
Yeah. And I would like to give a special shout out towards the manga writer, Koharu Inoue. It's his only manga. And I'm going to play devil's advocate because they are the stubborn anime fans that don't like CGI. This is not a CGI show. It's a show. Let me state that as a thing. But the manga has its charm too. The art really pops and the story is seamless. Please check out regardless.
But yeah, I think this show stands on its own in the way that Beastars does.
Yeah, the perfect example.
Like there's no, I mean, the CGI, like I said, doesn't detract. It actually, I think, gives this show. It makes this show more original.
Yeah.
And it makes this show. If they had just done this show as a straight regular 2D animation, I'm not sure it would have been as endearing as it was. I think that the 3D animation, the CGI, really helped it.
Yeah, for sure. And with that said, thank you that you have checked out this episode.
Yep.
And we'll lead you to our part 2 of our not really monster special. That's what I'm thinking for the title. Yeah.
Something to do with
something to do with John. Then
don't do monsters, but do more like our vampires, our spooky vampires, and our gothic
guys are not spooky.
Vampire. So you have a vampire, and
you
have
the
Duke of Death,
the Grim Reaper. Yeah.
So our Men in Black special,
the Men in Black special. It's been our part 1 of our Men in Black special. Yeah, and part 2 is coming away with the Vampire Dies in No Time.
And now, Jack, we'll be talking about one of my favorites from last year, The Vampire Dies in No Time.
No.
Oh, John. This show made me fall in love with armadillos.
Oh, yes.
And I'm not, I'm brave enough to say that.
New terrain. If I could adopt one, I will adopt one.
There you go. Just for the love of John.
Oh yeah. John the Armadillo. Now, John the Armadillo is one of those characters, or at least starting off as the side characters, that immediately sets the tone of this wild and crazy ride.
It is. This show is insane. Yeah. And I have to warn you now, this show is not for kids. This is not a children's show. This is a show for adults.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it'll work for like older teenagers too.
Adult Swim crossover type of show.
Yeah, with a lot of raunchiness.
Yeah, raunchy, not sexist. It's more like
well, I think you mean not sexual.
Good call.
This show isn't about fan service.
Yeah.
It's not about it's about being comfortable with sexuality in a lewd and ridiculous way.
Good call. Good observation, because that's especially for anime, that's a territory that they do cross over.
Yeah.
And it's subjective. One example we just did our review of Onimai. Because that 110, 20, 30, 40, 50 different context.
Oh yeah, that show Onimai has I'm not like, okay.
We don't have to dive into it.
There's a level, I'm going to flat out say it. There's a level of, that show is for people who, it might not be to everyone's taste.
Yeah.
Vampire Dies in No Time essentially understands that conversations about human body parts, whether it be breasts or penises, can be uncomfortable at times.
Yeah.
This is not for someone's taste. This is to poke fun at and, laugh at our hang-ups about, the human body.
Human nature in general.
Yeah.
And it starts off with our two lead characters of Ronaldo and Draluk. Jack. Or technically Jack. Dracula.
Yeah, but they call him Drac.
Yep.
And it's hilarious because that's when this show starts to play on, it plays with conventions of horror and totally subverts them.
Yeah. Not only that, but a specific type of anime, at least lost time of anime, I'll put it that way, with vampire shows.
Oh yeah, it's totally making. This show is the parody show of vampire shows.
All, you know what? Good call. All vampire shows.
All vampire shows.
Including monsters.
Everything gets made fun of in this show.
Yes.
There's nothing sacred. It will upend your expectations of everything.
Yeah. Because the 90s like bubble of vampire shows, they're fascinating. It's almost like a lost time, similar likes of Full Metal Panic, kind of like its own type of like lore now.
Zany ridiculousness.
Well, more of like the first shows, of course, as you see Ronaldo, for example, Vampire Hunter D and Hellsing.
Yeah.
Yeah. At least those type of vampire shows.
Yeah, riffing off of that.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I think the first episode encapsulates the entirety of what you're going to get from the show.
Yes, yes.
So Ronaldo has shown up in town because this woman's child has gone missing.
Mm-hmm.
They're afraid that he's gone into the vampire's castle. And so you have the setup. You have the hero, you have the missing child, and you have the vampire, the dangerous vampire. So Ronaldo goes to the castle, and what does he find? He finds the child and the vampire playing video games. So it's totally like, he's like, wait, what?
Yep.
But Ronaldo will not be deterred. He will save this child regardless, even though the child does not want to be saved.
This child is annoying as hell.
This child is harassing Drac way more than Drac is harassing him. Yeah.
It's an interesting first episode.
Yeah.
And it's not a hard sell, but it's a show that once you keep up with dialogue, at least within that first 10 minutes or so, you have to be comfortable with it.
Well, this show is hard to watch. The subtitles, it's a fast-paced show.
It is.
Like they're throwing the dialogue, the jokes are coming at you, the dialogue is coming at you. It's nonstop.
Yeah.
And so it's like it's a hard show to watch subtitle. I haven't watched the subbed yet.
Yeah, I haven't seen the English either.
Yeah, but I did watch the dubbed, and I knew that I had to go back a couple of times because I knew that I was missing some of the jokes.
Yeah.
Because this show, the comedic timing is just like, it's like nonstop.
Abbott and Costello school.
Yeah.
Groucho Marx school.
Yeah, like the zany, the zany slapstick, like even Drac, which, okay, so he's the titular character. He is the vampire that dies in no time.
Literally dies.
Because literally he will turn to a pile of ash at any little thing.
And it's in the first minute of this show.
You don't even need to drive a stake through his heart. If you bump into him or just scare him a little too much, he will literally die.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I remember your initial reaction towards the show, at least for the first episode or two. You're like, how he dies is kind of annoying.
Because it's like every 5 minutes he's dead.
Yeah.
And you would think, and literally the title is the show, The Vampire That Dies in No Time.
Yeah.
And I do want to give a shout out to that opening.
Yeah.
Because man, that opening is great.
Yeah, in the same vein as Sleepy Princess and the Demon Castle, which we
not only that, but Inspector,
like the most unique openings you could think of.
Like watching them dance on a roulette table, that giant roulette table. I mean, it's really cool. There's a lot of energy. There's a really good beat to it.
Yeah.
And I think it really sets like the tone. Like this is what you're getting. Like you're gonna get this zany, fast-paced, like ridiculous show.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it kind of reminds me of almost like, and this is gonna sound weird, but it almost reminds me of like the 90s Ninja Turtle show.
I can see that.
Where you get that zany vibe where you're going to get a lot of jokes.
Yeah. When you're a kid, you don't think of the humor because you're just like, oh, two mutant turtles are just hanging out.
Or even like Pokemon.
Yeah, Pokemon.
Where you get this
Team Rocket.
Yeah, you get this episodic, they're very much like Team Rocket.
Yeah.
You get like kind of like this episodic like humor, but like set in that city, like almost like not anywhere near as dark as Batman the Animated Series.
No. This is like,
but you get that like nighttime. This is almost like this is almost like the comedy version of the Batman animated series.
And also called The Night, the comedy version of that one.
Yes, very much so. I can see that. Yeah.
Because
That's a good comparison.
Yeah, because Call of Night is the night, and it's more of the mood, more of the questions in life when you ask into the night. Vampire Diaries in No Time is the celebration of the nightlife, of the fun, of the late night humor.
Yeah. Very much so.
Yeah. And during that whole exchange during the castle, Ronaldo unfortunately burns down Drax castle.
And now he has nowhere to live.
Nowhere to live.
So it's just him, John, and his video games.
Yep.
And so he just moves in with Ronaldo.
Yep. And John the Armadillo is the familiar, so he tags along regardless.
Yep.
And he makes a small little cameo in that first exchange. You don't see him, but he's used as a prop.
Well, I love the fact that Drac doesn't even have control of his castle.
Yeah.
He's like, the castle's a death trap. And the kid that Ronaldo's there to save is essentially using the castle against them.
And most annoying brat possible.
Yeah, like I'm like, is this kid, like, the kid essentially becomes the foil for the episode.
Yeah.
He is the villain.
Yeah.
So they turn your expectations on their heads, and Ronaldo and Drac are just trying to survive Drac's castle without this kid killing them.
Yeah.
But, essentially they end up destroying the castle, and it becomes the Odd Couple.
Yes, and I wanted to bring up this one because Odd Couple is a fascinating story in play and movie. However, it's one of those stories where I never really got the gist of it. Like, they don't like each other. Why bother?
Because it's played for laughs.
It is.
That's the whole point.
Yeah, it's just one of those comedy things where you just have that leap of faith.
Well, you have the structure where two people who shouldn't like each other and who should be opposed to each other, and who are like night and day to each other, like literally a vampire and a vampire hunter, are essentially forced to live together because A, the vampire isn't that much of a threat, and B, the vampire hunter is stupid.
Yeah. And
Ronaldo's just dumb.
Yeah, like Ronaldo literally could have left Drac in his own.
Yeah.
With John, whatever. Because
but the guilt, I mean, Drac uses the guilt to okay, I need a place to live.
It's set in stone, and even though I questioned the Odd Couple, by accepted, this one I'm like really questioning, like, do they actually like each other?
No! I don't think they do.
Because throughout the whole series, you get all these weird scenarios where you feel for Ronaldo, you feel for Drac.
Yeah.
However, the other opposing fact is their partner living together, and they don't care.
Well, they make each other crazy.
Yeah.
They make each other absolutely crazy. But as the show goes on, they start to realize that it's kind of like them against the world, because the world is insane. The world of The Vampire Dies in No Time is this goofball, like, comedy of, like, collection of, like, what the fuck am I watching? Yeah.
Because it starts off small, like our part one of our special with Duke of Death. Basically, it's small, quiet moments with Bochan and Alice. You get to know that this is the focus, at least the progression of the show. This one does that, at least for the first sequence of events, but it evolves steadily, like a tree, into this weird universe.
Well, yeah, it's like this zany collection of oddballs. So essentially you have your setup.
Yeah.
You have Drac, who's a vampire. You have Ronaldo Kun, who is a vampire hunter. And so that's the world that you're in.
Yeah.
There's vampires and there's hunters.
Yeah, and the hunters have a council, and Drac's family is its own family of vampires.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you're introduced. Well, Drac is kind of like his own thing.
His family too.
Yeah. Like they're kind of like the old school, old guard vampires.
Yeah.
But the people that the vampire hunters hunt are like this insane group of like walking sex jokes.
Yeah. Well, not only that, like, think of like Arkham Asylum. Think of like Batman's own League of Villains.
Rogue Gallery.
The Rogue Gallery.
Mm-hmm.
And basically, they all intersect. They all have team ups. However, each vampire villain in this show is more ridiculous than the other.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. See, that's one of the things about this show is that it starts out like the episode will start out like with a setup.
Yeah.
And it will just get crazier and crazier and crazier as it goes along until the point where like the funniest point is always at the end.
Yeah.
Because it will take all of the things that it's established during the episode and build to a crescendo that is like absolutely hilarious.
Yeah.
The vampire with the flower penis.
Oh, okay.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
That's the first villain you encompass with. And
Yeah.
they go straight up to that type
Like
of
there's
humor.
no, this goes from 0 to 60 like in a flash.
Yeah.
And you're just like, what? Yeah. And then
Because they're still getting associated with the environment, like we mentioned with
Yeah.
not only the Council of Hunters, but also the Guild of Hunters.
the Guild of Hunters is really interesting
Yeah.
because it's pretty much like any fantasy game.
Yeah, and hang out.
Yeah, like they're all hanging out at this one bar, and you get introduced to like the different stereotypical hunters
Yeah.
that are just parodies on like
Yeah.
different. Yeah,
One of them is dressed up like Dante from Devil May Cry.
yeah.
Yeah. And then one's dressed up like Cloud with the arm plate. And you're still associating, you're still figuring this out. Like, are they in the same level as Ronaldo? Like, you're thinking of like Ronaldo as traditional hero. But little by little, you start to see that Ronaldo's not exactly the golden hero.
He's not, but sometimes. Well, he's kind of like.
He downplays the heroism, let's put it that way.
Well, he's just as ridiculous as. No, I'll take that back.
He's number one in my book for that.
He's the number one ridiculous person
Yes.
because he doesn't get it.
Yeah.
Like, he's the most popular vampire hunter that there is,
Yeah.
but he's also the most clueless.
Yeah.
Like, he just doesn't get it. Like, everybody's like, what is wrong with this guy? You know?
Even the guild, yeah.
Yeah, like, what? And so I think there's a little bit of resentment, but they don't really play it too much.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude. Oh my god.
And Jack, he at least, even though he bickers and makes fun of Ronaldo as much as he can, at any opportunity he can, he at least highlights that with other people, which is fascinating.
Yeah. Well, he loves, like, when he's first introduced to this, he's like, so this is how these people see you.
Yeah.
You
He
know?
figures it out.
He figures it out real fast. He's like, I don't think they really like you. He's like, they might hate me because I'm a vampire, but they definitely don't like you.
Well, the agency is interesting because you find out a little bit along the way the depths of the agency. And one particular character, his name is Honda.
That's funny.
Honda in
Yeah.
that agency, he's technically a Dampier, half vampire, half human.
So the setup is that, so as we're being introduced to the world, we've been introduced to the Vampire Guild and all of its hunters, and there's a special division of the police force that deals with vampires. And Honda's from he's from this division, and they're supposed to be like the badass professionals. They're not.
No. This is
No.
not Vampire Hunter D.
No.
It's not.
These guys are
This is far removed from Helsing.
These guys are like the biggest joke. They're oh my god. They're just like, and I love how the show starts out with like, we're badasses. Ronaldo, I hate you because my mom loves you.
Yeah. That's Honda. Honda has a fanboy complex with Ronaldo.
Oh yeah, it's like it's absolutely hilarious. And it's just like, this show just takes anything that you think is going to be serious.
But in a weird way, too, is in case in point with Honda, he starts off as a super, super, super annoying subordinate.
Yeah.
A super guy that you know is the automatic rival. But there's layers upon that. And I did not even like.
You weren't expecting it.
Even at the end of the first season, I did not like this guy.
Yeah.
But then middle of like the second season or the last quarter, I liked Honda.
Yeah. Well, because and I haven't finished the second season.
Yeah.
But
it's still not, as of this recording, it still hasn't concluded.
I'm saving this for like my end of season catch up.
I saw this entire series up to the point in less than 3 days.
Yeah, it's because it's hilarious.
It's automatic.
It's you just burn through them. It's one of those shows where like you will burn through it.
Yeah. Well, the first 5 or 6 are definitely uncanny valley.
Well, because I think they're setting. It's a lot of setup.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things where it's like you kind of have to be patient with it a little bit it's like it will be funny.
Yeah.
And it will deliver on the jokes.
Yeah, like early in the first half of the season, they had like this weird exchange with the vegetables coming alive. I didn't care for that. It was
vampire
funny.
vegetables. Yeah,
I didn't care for it, but it had this one special gag that was introduced: Ronaldo's hatred of celery,
his fear of celery.
Yes, and
his absolute mind destroying. Like he cannot. Celery will. That's essentially his kryptonite.
Yeah, and it's garlic, if you will, to Drax's garlic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think of it as like a throwaway gag. I'm like, no way in hell are they going to resurface this.
Oh, but they do.
They hammer it.
It's one of the best gags.
Yeah, they force it on you. It's similar in the same vein as Wile E. Coyote always gets killed.
Yeah. It's one of it's one of the best gags that runs through the show.
Yeah.
Because you know that it's there.
And it's going to come.
And you know that somebody is going to pull out some celery and Ronaldo's going to lose it.
Especially Drax, because there's a funny episode where Drax is about to do some errands. He's like, oh, before I go, he throws a celery in the shower and locks up Ronaldo. Edwin's crying right now.
Oh my God. He's like, bitch.
It shows their obsession of...
Well, they're kind of
hatred.
Like, well, it's like this Cold War where each one of them is trying to up the ante on like messing with each other.
A spy versus spy scenario.
Yeah, because he'll grab John and throw it at Drac, and Drac will just die.
Yeah.
You know, it's like shit like that.
Yeah.
And the whole show is like that. Like there's just these running gags. Like if somebody gets introduced, you know they're going to come back.
No, well, that's what part of the first, or I would argue even the first season, one and done villains.
Yeah.
There's not going to be a league. These are super ridiculous. We're talking about, okay, let's introduce to the vampire villains. Because we have a nudist, a vampire that's a geranium hides his testicle area. Then we're introduced. We're thinking like a casual villain, like one and done villain, a villain of the week, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
We also got a lewd talking seducer villain. Like he makes you do the lewdest talk imaginable.
Yes. There's
another vampire villain that plays rock, paper, scissors strip version.
Yes. It's like, but he casts a spell on you.
Yeah.
So that you'll lose because he wants you to be nude.
Yes.
And then there's the guy who wants everybody to be in a skimpy bikini.
Yes. The G-string bikini.
The G-string bikini vampire. Yeah. It's like,
I can't even say they were a straight face.
No. But it's like who picked this rogue gallery? Where did they come from? And why can't they go back there?
And where are the origins? It makes you that fascinated.
Well, yeah, the psychology behind this. Yeah. You're like, but the thing too is that it's all to make the main character. It's all to make Ronaldo uncomfortable.
Yeah,
that's the whole point. You never feel like there's any kind of perversion. This is all to make you laugh at the main characters.
Yeah.
And it's gold because it's like there's moments where you're just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
What is happening? Yeah. Why is this happening?
Yeah.
What's happening now?
And that league, the villains that are introduced with as the vampire villains, quote unquote, because I should emphasize that they become reoccurring characters.
Yeah.
In its own like gag.
Yeah.
On top of a gag.
There is an episode in the second season where, and I'll jump forward a little bit because I think it's a funny payoff.
Yeah, and at this point, this is like beat for beat what the show is.
There's a funny moment where the vampire who he plays strip rock paper scissors.
Yeah, that one
is so the bartender has left his daughter in charge.
Yes.
And so the this guy Yakaikin, so essentially he plays rock, paper, scissors. He goes in pretending not to be a vampire so that he can essentially, bust out his game on the bartender's daughter. And she is on another level.
Yeah.
He's not prepared for like her obliviousness.
Yeah. And also her hidden strength. She takes him down quite easily. She's not whimmed whatsoever with his charms.
No.
Yeah.
Like none.
So he plays her game because she's alone and he's like, you know what, just make me a dish.
Yeah.
Just something quick, honey. She makes this
The most horrible food
so-called omelet with purple.
And it has crystals growing out.
And what's this?
Crystals and tentacles growing out of it.
And the vampire's inner dialogue is going, this crunchy thing, what am I eating? And he's like, he's moaning, saying, this is delicious.
Oh my god!
And mind you, these are super side characters. We're talking about like ones that could be like background characters on The Simpsons, not even having a line of dialogue.
Yeah,
the Simpsons has infamous lore on that stuff.
Yeah, like, but they this show brings them in, and it just plays this in an insane, zany way that you just get caught up in, and it's like a lot of it's just cheap gags.
Yeah,
but man, when they play them together, oh, dude, I'm just dying.
Yeah.
I'm dying.
And what encompasses what structures a show at the end of the day, because these two main characters, one adventure to the other, and their family of stories, and even outside of the metaverse of that story, there's a buffer piece. This round little shaped
John. Just John.
Our Lord and Savior John, who has his
Lord John,
who has his own fan club in the show.
Yes,
that,
he does.
With the fourth wall humor encompasses perfectly.
Yeah, he is.
He's a buffer piece, the ultimate buffer piece.
Well, he's so John is an armadillo. Let's start with that. Yes. He's an armadillo, and Drac has an armadillo as a familiar. Which, if you think about it, kind of makes sense for Drac because he wishes he could curl up into a ball and be safe, but he can't.
And Ronaldo's envious.
Yes.
Envious.
Well, who wouldn't be? Yeah. John is awesome.
Yeah.
Like, he's like the...
He plays cool with Ronaldo, too. He doesn't pick favorites.
No. Yeah. No, John, he's peace, love, and happiness, man. Yeah. He's real chill. He's real chill. He does have affection for Drac, and he has affection for Ronaldo, but he'll help out his homies.
Yeah.
The sad part is that sometimes I feel that John is smarter than the both of them.
Oh, he is.
Yeah, he gets it.
Mind you, his only line of dialogue is no.
Yes.
No.
But he manages to work with it, and he's got it more together than John or Ronaldo.
And the cute thing about the show is that, like we mentioned with the music, the opening, of course, the closing after each and every episode. Yeah. Mind you, there's another discussion to have about the cliffhangers, but after this, I'll talk about the ending because each ending of each episode is a foreshadowing of a future episode where it shows the origins of John.
Yes.
Yeah, because John is literally from South America.
Yes. Yeah, John is from another country.
Yeah. And how it's set up is that Drac's family has an excursion out there, and sure enough, they meet up with John, and they become buddies right off the bat. However, Drac has an obligation to uphold when he goes back home, so he leaves him cold.
Yeah.
And even though John is with a family of armadillos,
he wants to find his friend.
You can hear in his voice with the new news.
Yeah, the bond of friendship is stronger.
And the tears. Yeah. And he goes on this epic quest through a boat with it only carrying a map just to find Drac in his castle.
Yeah, that was one of the most touching episodes of a show that's entirely played for laughs.
Yes.
And you're like, it's the main character's an armadillo.
Yep.
And you're like, what's happening? Yeah.
Ultimately, I consider it the finale, to be honest, but the finale is for the first season is perfect, in my humble opinion.
The story, I enjoyed the setups for the gags more than the story.
Yeah, because what I'm downplaying is that there's this random battle, but all the vampire hunters team up together for this conclusion.
Yeah.
It's the final skit of the first season is a bickerment between the Drac and Ronaldo, of course, over who would pay for a PlayStation 5. After this epic, probably the best battle in the whole season.
Well, because they're roommates, and it's like they're roommates that can't stand each other, but are with each other at the same time. It's like, but they're like, they've become friends.
Yeah.
There's definitely like concern. it might not be the most deepest level of concern
Yeah.
because they will throw each other under the bus given any chance.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like they're buddies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how I'm for this finale though, why I endear it, why I consider it one of the best comedies out there, is because they do a Kaguya-sama thing where they play games. And Kaguya-sama is very underrated with his game setup play, and it's deep knowledge of it.
Understandably, they all live in fear of his grandfather.
Yeah.
Like, because his grandfather is his grandfather is that insane relative that shows up and says, "Hey,
Yeah.
I will give you $1 million if you do all this crazy shit."
Yeah.
And they're like, "No."
Yeah. Well, also a key thing what I mentioned with the cliffhangers is with the grandfather. Each every episode, they do a parody upon a parody. And this is where it gets into Vampire R&D, Devil May Cry territory, where it's a cliffhanger, where there's dangerous vampires out and about.
But who is it? Yeah.
It turns out to be those stupid vampires, the stupid villain vampires.
Yeah.
But one of them is the grandfather. And the grandfather one has a setup where it's like Berserk. Dead bodies floating in blood. And this big ominous vampire like Castlevania lures from the sky. Turns out that this vampire has an insane thing for Mario Party games.
Yes.
A live action Mario Party episode.
Yep. And he's included everyone.
Yeah.
And I love, what's the name that they come up with for Ronaldo?
Oh, Ronaldo's trying to go on alias because he's a vampire hunter.
Yeah.
In a whole party full of vampires.
Yeah, these old school vampires.
So Drac makes this very fast story.
He's a pole dancer.
Yeah, making fun of him at the same time.
Yeah.
And and Ronaldo had a counter to, "What's your name?" And Ronaldo's like, Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney,
the pole dancer.
And during this whole Mario Party game, each tile is literally a death trap.
Yeah. And they're like, "Dude, what are we doing?"
and the one that Ronaldo luckily gets onto is a bunny suit.
He's wearing that red bunny suit.
And near the end, mind you, this is near imperial of impending death. The one of the final titles is just end every sentence with meow.
Yeah. Oops.
Meow.
This show. I mean, oh God, yeah.
But close one chapter to the other chapter, at least for the first and second season, because the second season has, like the John episode, very sweet and endearing episodes. Like I alluded to earlier with one of the characters in the console, Honda, he has a mother that's in the Ronaldo fan club.
Yeah.
And one thing we forgot to mention too, because this show has stacked upon universes within each other.
Well, the references, like at some point, like Honda is he's punching a Ronaldo punching bag.
Yeah.
He's like, he's in the office and he's like, you open a door and there he is punching the bag, and it's hilarious.
Yeah. But one thing we've understated with Ronaldo is that he's world famous. He has his own publishing line with books.
Oh, we can get into that. Yeah.
Because Honda's mom reads those books and is a big fan of Ronaldo.
Yeah.
So there's a cute episode where Honda accepts his mother as she is.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. Eventually. Oh, you didn't get there yet.
No. Yeah.
All right. You'll see.
Yeah, I got some homework to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean,
but the publishing is more important. Yeah.
So his publisher is insane. So this publishing company essentially has death matches to see who gets promoted.
Yeah.
Fukuma is essentially works for the publishing agency, and Ronaldo lives in fear of this man because he will literally lock him up in an Iron Maiden in order to get him to write the book.
Yeah.
And you just wonder, how the hell did this relationship, how did this end up happening?
It reminded me of another show that kind of has like the same universes within the universes is Venture Brothers. They would do like a one-off thing where it shows a different depth of a character, and that's the different side of Ronaldo. He's world famous.
Yeah.
But this publishing firm is utterly insane.
Yeah.
Because the other characters introduced are even wackier than Fukuma.
Well, yeah, it's like I said, they're having a death match.
Yeah.
To figure out, like, okay, who's gonna be like the next agent, who's gonna get promoted.
Yeah.
And it's like, what?
Yeah.
But it totally works in this universe.
Yeah.
It totally works in the universe of this show because it's like, yeah, it would be that ridiculous. I love that Ronaldo is absolutely, positively terrified of this guy. Like you think celery's bad. Celery's nothing compared to Fukuma. Yeah. It never stops like flipping your expectations. So there's the heroine.
Yes.
Yeah.
One of the best characters.
Hinachi, she's supposed to be essentially like the hero.
Yeah.
She's the baddest of the bad. She's ridiculous. She's ridiculous. Just like all the rest of them are ridiculous. She's not as smart as she thinks is.
Yeah. Well, she has an obsession with Drac, and there's that's the only
because he is a vampire.
Yeah.
And he must be watched.
A tamed vampire.
Yes. Well, that's what but that's what she wants to find out.
Yeah.
Is he tamed or isn't he?
Yeah.
And it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, in a character like that, you'd be hard on a surface, but of course, with the other inclusions, the vampires, like case in point, the lewd talking vampire, he exposes that little secret of hers, her inner thing, her inner kink, and that is saying dick in the most inappropriate ways possible. Yeah, I know.
Oh my god! Then there's the vampire that essentially is just a walking penis.
Yes. And that's a weird thing too. Like there's vampires with different forms.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're not like. And then what's the ostriches?
Yeah, that's the
running gag of the ostriches.
Yeah, that's like its own separate. This is a show that packs in so much universe.
There's so much ridiculousness. And none of it is wasted.
No.
There's not a gag that if you see a gag, it's going to come back. It will come back to haunt the characters. And that's one of the things that I love about this show. I love the Three Stooges kind of like ridiculous, over the top, like insanity that is this show. And it just gets funnier.
Yeah.
Like it gets funnier and more touching as it goes along.
Oh, yeah.
This show is smart enough to care about its characters, which I really appreciate.
Yeah.
Because they could easily have just been like, we don't care and we just want to play for the laughs. And I've seen shows like that where it's just like, okay, we're just going to go with we're going to go with something that's funny and we're not going to care.
Yeah.
But with the inclusion of John and then Ronaldo and Drac's, relationship.
Honda's mom.
Honda's mom.
I adore her.
Which... Honda's mom is in love with Ronaldo.
Oh,
yeah, she's a big fan.
And then there's a cute little moment where Ronaldo's about to die. He thinks of like cherished moments, and one of them is Honda's mom.
Which would piss off Honda to no end. Oh, my God.
Oh, man. Yeah, and what you get out of the show, too, because behind the scenes type of thing, Jack is trying to learn, or at least redive into Japanese.
Woohoo!
Doing small baby steps from Duolingo to books. I have like 8 books about Japanese, learning Japanese at least. This is a show that you would be amazed where you pick up the language relatively fast. In like words I'm learning right now, and the kanji and everything is implanted in me at this point. It's fascinating, especially if you're curious about Japanese culture. This is a show that has even like the most meta Japanese humor you can think of, and does it seamlessly. Because there's a certain gag where they make fun of the Kenji characters, to the culture wars, you name it. It gives you a weird, deeper appreciation of Japanese culture.
Yeah, and then like the region.
Yes.
Like they play with that.
Yes.
Like there's in the first episode, I think the second season, there's a character
from
from another region.
A new hunter, yeah.
Yeah, and he's like, I can't deal with these people. He's like, they're just as bad as the villains. And he's like, I'm out.
Yep.
I'm out. He was not prepared for the villains or the heroes.
Especially the heroes.
Yeah. And he's like, what's happening?
Yeah, but he turned out to be a Ronaldo fanboy.
Of course, because,
Yeah.
everybody's hiding something in this show.
Which leads me to this question. If you had to pick one, because we're not picking John, because John's unanimous.
Yeah.
If you had to pick between Ronaldo or Drac. Okay, I would choose Ronaldo.
Really?
Yeah, he's the most honest, the most baffling honest character in the show.
I get that.
Yeah.
He doesn't have the wherewithal to be anything other than what he is.
Yes.
Yeah, he just doesn't.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him like both charming and endearing.
Yeah.
In spite of the fact that he's an idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're just like, all right.
And with Drac, you relate with him more, I take it.
Oh, yeah. Well, Drac to me is like...
I have conflicting things with Drac because mainly of how he can be mean to Ronaldo. So I like Ronaldo more. That's it.
I know. Well, Drac, he's like, there are moments where it's like he has to remember that he's the villain.
Yeah, that too.
And it's like it's like he's like, oh, I have to be John's foil.
Yeah.
I mean, I have to be Ronaldo's foil. It's like, oh, but it's like he has to remember. It's like, oh yeah, I have to bother him now, or it's like
it's part of my checklist.
Yeah, it's like, wait, have I bothered Ronaldo today? It's like, let me check that off the list. It's like, he has. It's like he has to give him grief.
Yeah.
It's like, who is he if he doesn't give Ronaldo grief?
I know. Yeah.
That's the whole point. It's like, it's like, how do I give him grief? And he's the gamer. And he's the so I love that. And I love that he has it's almost like he's like so hapless.
Yeah.
It's like you don't know what kind of situation he's going to end up in, and he has to be rescued. Either whether it be by Ronaldo or John or the vampire hunters or those annoying little kids.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's like Drac isn't going to resolve anything on his own.
Yeah.
And so I think that's kind of like why I like him.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh shit, what's going to happen to him now?
Yeah. And in no way, shape, or form do you get annoyed with this character. It's just a matter. Yeah.
You really don't. I mean, I don't think his dying at the beginning kind of like, because it's literally every 5 seconds in the first episode.
Yeah, especially the timing of the show, especially.
But then as it goes along, the ways in which he dies are pretty hilarious.
Yep.
Yeah, and then there's an episode where he's just continually dying.
Oh yeah.
As he's trying to transform.
Sun, and mind you, how he dies, he turns into sun.
Yep. Oh my god. What were you going to say?
Well, with closing thoughts, basically, like, I'm going to say this. This is, like, probably one of the most important reviews we've ever done. It's much fun as we had with this one, because this is one of those shows that's on the threshold of 7 and 6 rating on my anime list. That's a crime. Because this is one of the most unique and one of the most lively comedies out there. Not just in anime, but throughout entertainment as a whole.
I agree. This show is unlike anything else. Like, I've seen parody shows, but I think as far as other comedy shows, I think this one delivers way more. Like, there are shows where I will laugh just for the writing alone. Watch this show, because it's funny. Like, it's legitimately funny. Like, not all of the gags land. And the first season might be might have a slow start to it.
Yeah.
But once they get going, it is nonstop funny. And the second season only builds on that with the hype, the energy, and the fact that, hey, like, our characters are crazy and we're just going to make them crazier.
Yeah.
And that's how the second season, it's like there's a build up in each episode to a joke. You laugh. Then they do it again in the next episode. And then they do it again in the next episode. And with each episode, the jokes just get funnier and funnier and funnier. And that's what the second season is. It's like the build up to the joke, and then it's funnier.
Yeah.
Because by that point, the characters, what they're capable of. And now they're interacting with each other. And they just keep building on that. Like you said, there was an episode with the... One of the characters from the agency has gone over to their offices, and he's hiding in the closet, and he encounters one of the vampiric vegetables.
Yeah.
And it becomes essentially his servant.
Yeah.
Bringing him food and dishes that he's like, oh, okay.
Yep.
It brings him tea and everything. And so it's like these little gags that turn into like these hilarious moments that are built on other things, and you just don't see that. That's what good comedy is.
Yeah.
Good comedy builds on itself. It tells you a joke. If you watch a comedy performance, the best of them will call back to something that they said at the beginning of the performance.
Yeah, precisely.
And bring it full circle, making you laugh even harder. It builds on top of that. The jokes build on top of each other until you're busting a gut. And this show does that.
Yeah.
And that's pretty rare for like a cartoon.
Yeah, modern day comedies, I would argue too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that I've watched anything else that does it as well as The Vampire Dies in No Time.
Closest for me is It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. That one keeps on going. Compared to like modern day comedies right now, like Ted Lasso, The Office. I like them, but they don't like they have their time and place with the humor. A lot of them fall, unfortunately, but this one keeps building and building and building and building.
It's very rare to find a show that builds on that comedic humor in the way that this show does.
Precisely, yeah.
And that just has like this group of characters that just are, you know, like I said, they're parodies and spoofs of these different other characters. But I've never seen a show that manages to do it as well as The Vampire Dies in No Time.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like I said, the jokes don't always land and it falls flat. But I would say that about 80% of the time, this show is funny and this show is endearing. And it's I think for those reasons alone, it's worth watching.
Yeah.
I mean, just for John.
Yeah, just for you know what? At the end of the day,
for John.
We should have said this whole episode do a new special.
Yeah, it's just John.
I like the old Armadillo too. No.
When John's going out to get donuts and he gets lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have a little tidbit for John because one little tidbit I like to give for John. It's the same voice for Kanamori from Keep Your Hands Off Aizuken.
Really?
The same voice actress.
Very cool.
Yeah, her name is Mitsumi Tamura.
Okay.
Yeah, and she's also What's from A Sentence of a Bookworm.
Oh, nice.
Our first 2 podcast episodes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Call back, man.
Call freaking back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is one last thing I need to address, like the ingenuous rating that I've noticed so far with my anime list. This is an all-star, on top of all-star cast from different generations. We're talking about modern day ones that were included from Sword Art Online, Demon Slayer, quintessential quintuplets. One I can't help but notice is Jack's mother, the Major, from Ghost in a Shell.
Nice.
Motoko. That actress is Asuko Tanaka. Oh, yeah. And then the weird doctor in The Agency. He's in JoJo's Bizarre Adventure.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he's also a new character in To Your Eternity. Very distinct voice. And he's been doing it for years. He even did Neon Genesis as Misato's boyfriend.
Okay. So they just drew from everywhere.
Yeah. The oldest one is the Rock, Paper, Scissors one. I forget what show is he in, but he's done anime for over 40 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think that like goes to show about this show.
Yeah.
Is that it feels like that.
Yeah. Like it's like Ocean's 11 times a million.
Yeah. It feels like there's a lot of quality put into this.
And a lot of love and care.
Yeah. And it shows through. And it does make me sad that it doesn't have a higher rating because it's like it's very unique.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of my viewage lately, at least for a lot of newer animes, is watching through the app, through the Crunchyroll app. Mm-hmm. And I love seeing the comments. It makes me feel like I'm part of the community and gives me feedback, at least with our reviews. And it's low. We're talking like a show that is sadly a little bit more popular, but Vampire is funnier and better, actually. And I hate to admit it, Ozaki-chan Wants to Hang Out. And they have like over 3,000 comments, ratings galore. This one has like barely 150 comments. Yeah. And even with the first season, it's been over 2 years since the first season, not even 500. This is a show that needs to pump up numbers and viewage.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And I think it's because it is, I don't think it's a tough sell, but it definitely doesn't follow more modern patterns.
Or at least modern day anime comedies, yes.
I mean, and it is because of the kind of humor that it decides to tackle, which is mostly like embarrassing, like, you know, embarrassing sex jokes.
Double entendres are like obsolete
up
in this
the wazoo.
show.
Yeah. It's like,
and it makes it meaningless.
I mean, because essentially it's in your face. Literally. It's a flower in your face.
A geranium being blocked by a nudist.
Well, I think the geranium was the...
Oh, that too.
Yes.
Its own subculture.
That was his... that was the... that was the metaphor for the not so subtle metaphor for planting seeds.
Oh yeah. Oh, because at that moment I'm like I'm done, but I'm satisfied with this show.
Yes, yes, yes. Yeah, I think so. I think the adult humor kind of limits its audience in a way, but I think if you're an adult anime fan, this is definitely a
Yeah.
show that you should check
And
out.
I mentioned earlier crossover appeal. Well, one show special we did a review of is the Dragon Goes House Hunting.
Yeah.
Like these both of these shows can be on Adult Swim right after Family Guy or some other random show that they have, and people will watch. They will like it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I agree, especially this one. I think that the jokes might be a little too raunchy for Adult Swim, but it could definitely be a cable show.
Yeah.
Definitely on cable.
And Dragon Goes House Hunting has moments, but it's like it has like that feel, that ping, like something you can't describe that will work.
Well,
Somewhere.
that one, Dragon Ghost House Hunting does the same thing that Vampire Dies in No Time.
Yes.
It plays with your expectations of the fantasy. With that one, it does it with like dragons in a fantasy world where you have your main character, Letty, who is a play on that, it subverts that expectation of like dragons are fierce creatures that destroy.
Yeah.
Letty is a coward.
Oh yeah.
Who and over the course of that show he becomes, brave and essentially the hero.
Yeah, yeah.
With the Vampire Dies in No Time, they don't have that much respect for anybody.
No.
They're not. Nobody's getting any respect in this show.
No.
But I think that a lot of people who grew up with shows like, like Vampire Hunter D, this is a show for those kind of people.
That too.
Where it's like you grew up with that show and now you want to watch something that makes fun of that show. This is perfect.
And it's perfect gap for that too.
Yeah.
And almost like a reintroduction to anime too, for sure.
Oh yeah, definitely. If you haven't watched anime in a while and you want to you want to ease your way back in the most uncomfortable way possible,
Yeah.
this might be the show for you because it will make you laugh. It will make you uncomfortable, but it will make you laugh. It will make you laugh very much.
Alrighty.
Yeah. So that concludes our review of The Vampire Dies in No Time.
Part 2 of our Men in Black special.
There you go.
And both shows, definitely watch it right as you hit stop on this recording. But before you do, please like, subscribe, download, and share. And subscribe through our YouTube channel, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and Podbean.
Thank you for listening, guys.
And goodbye for now. No.